The cold wind howled across the north, sweeping through the tall walls of Winterfell. It had been years since Robert's rebellion ended, but some scars never healed, especially not for Lord Eddard Stark. But in this version of the tale, one moment changed everything. It was the Tower of Joy. Ned had arrived too late in the original story. Lyanna was dying, her child just born. But not this time. This time Ned rode harder, faster, never stopping, not even for rest. With Howland Reed and a few loyal men, he reached the tower while Lyanna was still alive, weak, bleeding, but breathing. Her cries echoed in the tower as Jon Snow, no, Aegon Targaryen took his first breath. "Promise me." "Ned," Lyanna whispered, holding her baby close. Her eyes filled with both fear and love. "I swear it, Lyanna. On my life and honor." Ned didn't just take the child, he took them both. He carried Lyanna down the tower, his men clearing the path of Targaryen loyalists. He didn't kill Sir Arthur Dayne that day. He knocked him unconscious. Honor, after all, still meant something to the Lord of Winterfell. Once safe, he made a bold decision. He would not lie. When they returned to Winterfell, rumors swirled. The North didn't trust Targaryens. Lyanna, the beloved daughter of House Stark, returning with a Targaryen child. Many whispered she had been kidnapped. Others said it was love. But the truth, Lyanna had chosen Rhaegar, and the child was theirs. Robert Baratheon was furious. His war had been based on a lie. He had fought to save Lyanna, only to find she hadn't needed saving. Worse, her son was alive. "I should have killed that bastard myself." Robert had roared in the Red Keep, drunk on wine and betrayal. But Ned didn't bend. "You will not touch him," he said coldly, his voice like ice. "He is under my protection. Harm him, and you go to war with the North." For once, Robert hesitated. He had lost Lyanna. He wasn't ready to lose Ned, too. And so, with clenched fists and a broken heart, he let it be, but he never forgave. Years passed. The boy grew strong in Winterfell, raised with the Stark children, but he was different. His hair was darker, but in the sunlight hints of silver could be seen. His eyes weren't grey like the Starks. They were violet like his father's. People talked. Lyanna, always quiet, never married. She stayed in Winterfell, raising her son with Ned's help. Catelyn Stark was never happy with the arrangement. She tolerated Lyanna but hated the boy, a living reminder of Rhaegar Targaryen and everything the war had cost. Her heart hardened, especially when she saw how much attention Ned gave the boy. Jon, they called him, to hide his true name. But Jon wasn't like other children. He didn't fight for power like Robb or chase mischief like Arya. He was quiet, observant. He listened more than he spoke. And he had dreams of dragons. When Jon turned 10, ravens started arriving from the south. Whispers of unrest. Daenerys Targaryen was alive. So was Viserys. Across the narrow sea, the last Targaryens were stirring. And in the north, their heir, the real heir, was growing under the eyes of wolves. One night, as snow fell heavily across Winterfell, Lyanna sat with her son by the fire. "Am I a Stark?" he asked. "Not for the first time. You are more than that," she said softly. "You are the blood of dragons and wolves. One day the world will try to use you. Promise me, Jon. Be smarter than them. Be better." And as the fire crackled, the boy nodded, unaware that his name, his blood, his truth would one day burn kingdoms. Winterfell remained quiet on the outside, covered in snow and ancient stone. But inside its walls things were changing. Jon Snow, though that was not his true name, was no longer a child. At 13, he was fast, sharp, and full of questions. He had the Stark calmness, but there was something more inside him. A fire he didn't understand yet. Robb, Jon, and Theon Greyjoy trained in the yard daily, but Jon always fought harder. He moved with a speed that surprised the guards, and his instincts were far beyond his age. Sir Roderick called him a natural. Some whispered the boy had something unnatural in him. "Why does he fight like that?" One guard whispered. "He's not even the true-born son. He's something else," another said. Targaryen blood, fire in his veins. Catelyn Stark heard these whispers too, and she hated them. She had stayed silent for years for the sake of peace. But watching her husband's dead sister live comfortably under the same roof, and watching her husband look at that boy with a kind of pride he never showed Robb, it ate at her soul. One evening, as snow fell softly against the window panes, Catelyn went to Ned's solar. He sat at his desk, going through letters, tired lines under his eyes. "We need to talk," she said sharply. Ned looked up. He already knew what was coming. "I've let her stay here. I've accepted her presence. But I will not have that boy raised above my own children." "He isn't above them," Ned said firmly. "Not yet," she snapped. "But he will be. I see the way the men look at him. I see the way you look at him." Ned stood, his voice steady but low. "You forget yourself, Cat. That boy is family." "He's a Targaryen," she spat. "The son of Rhaegar, the same man Robert fought to kill." "You're playing with fire, Ned. If the truth gets out, I know what's at stake." Ned growled, louder than she'd ever heard him. "Do you think I wanted this? I've carried this secret like a blade in my gut for years. I've lied to my king, to my closest friend for the sake of that boy's life." Catelyn was quiet now. "I made a promise," he continued, his voice softer. "To my dying sister. I will not break it." She left without another word, but the coldness between them grew. Meanwhile, Jon was beginning to notice the way people looked at him. When he entered rooms, voices went quiet. When he walked the halls, some servants bowed slightly, out of habit, out of fear, or perhaps out of something deeper. One night, while sneaking into the library, he overheard Maester Luwin and his mother, Lyanna, whispering. "He's starting to ask questions," Luwin said. "He'll know soon enough," Lyanna replied. "He deserves to know. But how do you tell a boy he was born for a throne?" Jon turned away before they saw him. His heart pounded. A throne. Later that night, he crept into his mother's chambers. The fire was low, casting long shadows across the stone walls. "You lied to me," he said. Lyanna sat up slowly, her face pale. "Jon, who am I?" She looked at him for a long time. "You're my son." "That's not what I asked." Her lips trembled. And then she told him about Rhaegar, about their love, about how the world called him a kidnapper and her a victim, but it wasn't true. They had married in secret. He had been kind, gentle, not the monster Robert painted him to be. And Jon Aegon was their child, a boy born with the blood of the dragon and the wolf. "Your father died before he could protect you," she said, tears falling. "Your Uncle Ned risked everything to keep you safe. Even now, Robert would kill you if he knew." Jon sat in silence. His whole world had changed in minutes. He wasn't a Stark. He wasn't even a Snow. He was a Targaryen. In the days that followed, Jon changed. He trained harder. He studied more. And most importantly, he stayed quiet, but his dreams, they grew stranger. He saw dragons flying over mountains. He saw fire consuming cities. He saw a throne of swords, and always he was sitting on it. The north was quiet, but Jon Snow was not. Not anymore. Now that he knew the truth, that he was Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, every step felt heavier. Every sword swing, every word spoken, felt like it carried two names. The name the world knew, Jon Snow, Ned Stark's nephew, and the name the world had forgotten, Aegon, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. But he kept the truth buried in his chest like a burning coal. He didn't tell Robb. He didn't tell Arya, though her sharp eyes always studied him a little too closely. He certainly didn't tell Catelyn Stark, whose cold stares had turned to sharp glares. The only person he could talk to was Ghost. The white direwolf had come to him as a pup, quiet and watchful, just like him. Now the beast followed Jon everywhere, loyal to the blood of both wolf and dragon. One night, during a heavy snowstorm, Jon slipped away from the keep. He needed space. He walked beyond the godswood, past the old statues and red leaves, into the dark. He sat in the snow, Ghost beside him, the wind howling around them. That's when the vision hit him, fire. Screaming wings, massive, black wings tearing the sky open. A woman in a foreign land, standing in fire, untouched by the flames. A red comet cutting across the sky. A great wall of ice cracking. And a throne, jagged and cruel, dripping with blood. Jon gasped and fell back. His head pounded. His nose was bleeding. Ghost whined and nudged him. That night, he dreamt of dragons far to the south in King's Landing. The whispers had started. "Jon Snow is no bastard," someone had said in a brothel. "I heard he's the son of Rhaegar himself," another muttered in the markets. Littlefinger heard everything, and Varys heard more. Varys sent his little birds to the north. One didn't return. Another came back missing a finger. But the message was clear: Winterfell guards its secrets well. Robert Baratheon, however, did not take whispers lightly. "He's alive?" Robert said, gripping the Raven's message in a shaking hand. "Lyanna's boy." Ned Stark had sworn it was his bastard, had lied for years. But now, someone claimed the boy had Targaryen blood. "Bring me Ned Stark," Robert roared. "Now!" But Ned did not come. Instead, he sent a raven. "I swore to you once that I would protect my sister's memory. I now swear that if you move against her son, the North will remember." Eddard Stark, Warden of the North. Robert crushed the letter in his hand. His knuckles turned white. "That boy is a threat," he whispered. "A dragon waiting to wake. I should have killed him as a babe." But he didn't, because deep inside he still saw Lyanna in him. And it broke him. Back in Winterfell, Lyanna knew the time for hiding was almost over. One night, she and Ned sat alone in the crypts, in front of the statue of their father. "Rickard Stark, we can't protect him forever," she said quietly. "I know," Ned replied. "He's not just Rhaegar's son. He's my son. He's a Stark, too." "He deserves more than lies," Ned sighed. "If he leaves the North, Robert will find him. Then maybe it's time the realm remembered who he is," she said. They both sat in silence. The wind outside howled, almost like the old gods were listening. Jon had grown stronger. At 16, he was already taller than Robb. He was quiet but respected. Even Lord Stark's bannermen noticed. "He'll be a great warrior one day," they'd say, but others muttered darker things. "Looks too much like a Targaryen. What if he claims the throne?" Catelyn heard it too. Her fear became desperation, and then word came from the wall. Benjen Stark had vanished. Rangers were dying. Strange creatures walked in the woods beyond the wall. Dead men who didn't stay dead. The Night's Watch sent ravens. They begged for help. Ned Stark made his decision. "We ride to the wall, with men, with steel, with fire." Jon stepped forward. "I'll go," he said. Ned looked at him, truly looked. In that moment he didn't see the child he raised. He saw a leader, a warrior, a king, even if the world didn't know it yet, so Ned nodded. "You ride at my side." As the banners were raised and swords were sharpened, Jon stood at the gates of Winterfell, Ghost by his side. He looked back once. His mother stood in the courtyard, tears in her eyes. "Be careful," she whispered. "The world is waiting for you, and it will not be kind." He didn't know it yet, but the journey to the wall was just the beginning. The North was rising. And so was the last dragon. The wind north of the wall was like a knife. Jon pulled his fur cloak tighter, but it did little against the cold. The wall towered behind him, massive and ancient, and in front of him stretched the haunted forest, dark, silent, and full of things not meant for men. They had ridden from Winterfell with 200 men, seasoned Stark soldiers, a dozen trusted lords, and Ned Stark himself. The call from the Night's Watch had not been ignored. Something was happening in the far north. Rangers were disappearing. Weldlings fled south, and the old tales of White Walkers, of Whites, were no longer just stories whispered to scare children. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont welcomed them with grim eyes. "We found bodies," he said, leading them into Castle Black's cold hall. 2 rangers, pale as snow, eyes like blue fire. They rose when touched. "We burned them, it worked, but we don't know why." Ned Stark listened, his face grave. Jon said nothing, but every word struck something deep inside him. Something old, something that wasn't just fear. It was a calling. That night, Jon stood atop the wall, the wind in his hair, Ghost at his side. The world stretched out in silence. So much snow, so much darkness, and then he saw it, a figure just beyond the tree line, pale, tall, watching. He blinked. It was gone. The next morning, Jon joined a ranging party. 10 men, including Lord Ned himself, Sir Jory, and a few black brothers. They rode into the forest, torches lit even during the day. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The trees whispered in a language Jon didn't understand. Ghost growled low in his throat the entire time. They found the first body at dusk. A man, throat slashed, eyes frozen wide in terror. His skin was turning blue. Jon knelt beside him, his breath visible in the freezing air. No wounds, no blood, just fear. They buried the body and moved on. By nightfall, they made camp near an old weirwood tree. Its red eyes watched them as the wind picked up. "Stay alert," Ned ordered. Jon couldn't sleep. Ghost paced the edges of the camp, restless. Jon felt it too. Something was wrong. The air itself felt dead. Then he heard it, a crack, a whisper, a crunch of snow. He stood, sword in hand, eyes scanning the woods, and from the dark it stepped out. A white walker, tall, skin like ice, eyes glowing blue. It held a blade that shimmered like moonlight on water. "Get up!" Jon shouted. The camp exploded into chaos. Men grabbed weapons. Ghost lunged. The creature moved fast, too fast. Sir Jory swung his sword. The blade shattered on contact. "What in the seven hells?" someone screamed. Jon didn't think. He ran forward, grabbing a torch, and shoved it toward the creature's face. It hissed, backing away from the flames. "Fire!" Ned roared. "Use fire!" The men threw torches, swinging burning branches. The White Walker screeched, then vanished into the trees like a ghost in the wind. Silence returned, heavy, dreadful. One man was dead. 2 more wounded. The rest stood shaking. Jon breathed hard, heart pounding. "What was that?" he asked. Ned stared into the darkness. "A nightmare. One we thought died thousands of years ago. Back at Castle Black, the news spread like wildfire. White Walkers were real. The old stories were true, but most of the realm wouldn't believe it. South of the Neck, people cared more about gold than ice monsters. Jon, however, had changed. He had seen death in its coldest form, and something had awakened in him. That night, Maester Aemon called him. "You saw it, didn't you?" The old man asked. "Yes." Aemon leaned closer. "The world is shifting. Targaryen blood has always been tied to fire. And prophecy. You are both wolf and dragon. The cold dead are rising, and you may be the only one who can stop them." Jon stared at the ancient Maester, unsure what to say, but deep down he knew. He was no longer just Jon Snow. Back in King's Landing, Varys received the message. "The White Walkers live. Aegon Targaryen lives. The North has chosen fire and ice." He burned the scroll. Littlefinger smiled. "Chaos is coming." In Winterfell, Lyanna stood before the heart tree whispering prayers. She felt it. Her son's time was coming. The realm would try to control him, use him or kill him, but they didn't know him. He was ice. He was fire. He was their reckoning. And far beyond the wall, deep in the shadows of the frost fangs, something ancient opened its eyes. It had waited long enough. The last dragon had stirred. Now the dead would march. 2 weeks had passed since Jon Snow saw the White Walker. The memory still haunted him. Its glowing blue eyes, its sword of ice, the unnatural silence in the forest. But what haunted him more was the way it looked at him, as if it knew who he was. As if it had been waiting. Since that night, Castle Black had changed. The men were afraid. The wall no longer felt like the edge of the world. It felt like a dam about to break. And beyond it, the flood waited. Jon walked the top of the wall beside Lord Commander Mormont and his uncle Benjen, who had returned, wounded, frost-bitten, but alive, barely. "They're not hiding anymore," Benjen said, voice low. "The dead are gathering. You can feel it in the trees. The forest doesn't speak. Animals are gone. The wind smells wrong." Lord Mormont's face was grim. "And still the South won't listen." "They won't," Jon said. "They never will. Not until it's at their gates." He stared northward, where the land disappeared into endless white. "I'm going out again," he added. Benjen looked at him sharply. "You're not a ranger yet. I'm not a child either. I've fought one. I've seen what they are. I won't sit behind walls while others die." Lord Mormont studied him. "You're not just a Stark. You're something more." "Aren't you?" Jon hesitated. then nodded once. "I'm a Targaryen," he said. "Lyanna was my mother. Rhaegar was my father." Silence. Benjen exhaled slowly, the truth no longer just a family secret. "You've got the blood of the dragon," Mormont said. "Then maybe you're the fire the North needs." Back in Winterfell, Lyanna watched the flames in the Great Hall's hearth. Letters came daily now. Ravens flew constantly. Jon's name was being whispered across the realm. Varys had confirmed it to the small council. Littlefinger smiled more than usual. And Robert Baratheon, he drank. He drank like a man drowning. "He's not just a boy anymore," Lyanna said to Ned. "They'll come for him. If not to kill him, then to crown him. And either one is dangerous," Ned nodded. "We can't hide him forever, and we can't let the South decide his fate." Ned didn't respond. But his mind was already working. He called his bannermen. If war came again, the North would be ready. In the east, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood in the ruins of old Valyria. She had fire in her heart. Her dragons were growing fast, and now word had reached her. Another Targaryen lived, a boy raised in the north, protected by the man who killed her brother. Her face remained calm as Ser Jorah read the raven's message aloud. But inside she boiled with confusion. "Aegon?" she asked. "Your nephew," Jorah confirmed. "Son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. So he's the rightful heir." Jorah hesitated. "Some would say so, and others would say you are." She turned to look at Drogon, who hissed as fire flickered in his mouth. "Let them come," she whispered. "Let us see who the realm chooses." Back at Castle Black, Jon stood by the kennels feeding Ghost, who had grown larger than a dire wolf should. Maester Aemon approached. His white eyes blind, but his mind sharp. "You burn inside." "Boy," he said. Jon didn't answer. "You dream of fire, of wings, of war. I once dreamed too, but I was too afraid to chase it." Jon looked at him. "Oh, what do I do now?" Aemon leaned in. "You ride south. You show them the truth. Not just about the dead, but about you. You are not a bastard. You are not just a boy from the north. You are a prince, and the realm is broken." Jon shook his head. "They won't follow me. I've got no crown, no army." "You've got a name," Aemon said, "and blood that doesn't burn." That night, Ned Stark arrived at the wall. He brought 200 more men. Not to fight, but to speak. He met Jon in the crypts below Castle Black. "Your time has come," he said. Jon stared at him. "You raised me as your son. I never knew why you hid the truth, because the truth would have killed you. Then why now?" Ned looked him in the eyes. "Because winter is here, and with it the world will either burn or be frozen." He placed a sword in Jon's hands. Valyrian steel, dark sister once wielded by Visenya Targaryen, sister to Aegon the Conqueror. It had been hidden in the Stark vaults for centuries. "You will ride to Winterfell. We will call the banners. And when the South hears your name, they will have to choose, bend the knee to a true Targaryen, or be swept away with the dead." Jon held the blade. It felt light, familiar. The dragon stirred in his blood. Far north, the Night King stood on a frozen hill, surrounded by his army of whites. 10,000 dead eyes stared at the south. He turned toward the wall, raised one hand, and the ice beneath Castle Black began to crack. The sound came at midnight, a low, terrible crack, deep as the bones of the earth. Every man on the wall felt it in their chest, a vibration that was not sound but warning. Jon stood on the eastern rampart when the ice beneath him trembled. Ghost growled low, his white fur bristling. Then came the screams. Men rushed to the edge. A massive section of the wall near the old Eastwatch Tower had collapsed. Thousands of tons of ice shattered, plunging into the snowy hills below. The smoke, the cold mist, and the unnatural silence that followed, it was like the breath of a god. Then came the dead. They moved slowly at first, then faster, climbing the rubble, bones clicking, blue eyes glowing, and leading them, the Night King himself. Jon didn't hesitate. "To arms!" he roared. "Flaming arrows! Light the pits!" The horn sounded 3 times. White walkers. Ned Stark stood at the gates of Castle Black when the chaos began. He grabbed a sword, called for his men, and mounted his horse. "We hold them here," he shouted. "The wall may break, but the north will not." Jon fought beside him, cutting down wights, torching the fallen. But for every one that burned, 10 more came crawling. Valyrian steel flashed in his hands, Dark Sister slicing through cold flesh, melting ice-born monsters. And for a moment Jon felt it, that burning in his blood, that deep fire that didn't come from rage, but from destiny. He came face to face with a White Walker. Its ice blade clashed with his sword. Sparks flew. Jon ducked, spun, and drove Dark Sister through its chest. It shattered, but the Night King only watched. He didn't attack. He didn't raise a weapon. He just stared at Jon, their eyes locked, blue against grey. And in that moment Jon saw something terrifying. Recognition. They barely held Castle Black by morning. Hundreds died. The wall now had a breach. The dead had slipped back into the trees, not defeated, just waiting. Jon sat beside the fire, shirt torn, hands bloodied. Ned sat across from him, silent, grim. "They didn't want to take the wall," Jon whispered. "They wanted to show us that they could," Ned nodded. "This was only the beginning." Lord Commander Mormont stood beside them. "We send ravens to every kingdom. North-south doesn't matter. If they don't unite now, they never will." Far to the south, King's Landing buzzed with heat and tension. Robert Baratheon stood in the Red Keep's war room, reading the Raven from Castle Black. The wall had been breached. The dead walked. Jon Snow, no, Aegon Targaryen had survived the attack, and he carries Visenya's blade, Renly said, astonished. "That sword hasn't been seen in over a century," Varys spoke next, calm and cold. "He has the blood of the wolf and the dragon, and now the sword of a conqueror." Robert slammed his goblet down. "You all forget who his father was. Rhaegar, the man who started a war by stealing my bride." "He didn't steal her," Varys replied quietly. Robert turned slowly, rage burning in his eyes. "Speak again," Varys bowed. "As you wish, Your Grace." Littlefinger leaned in. "The realm won't follow the dead king's brother much longer. Jon Snow is no longer a bastard. He's a war hero, and the North already follows him." Robert gritted his teeth. "Then we crush the North before he grows stronger, but deep down, he knew it was too late." At Dragonstone, Daenerys received the Raven in silence. Her dragons circled above, larger now, wings like thunder. The message was clear. White Walkers had breached the wall. Aegon Targaryen lived, and he wasn't hiding anymore. Jorah stood at her side. "What now?" Daenerys stepped toward the fire. "Now I sail for Westeros. I will face my nephew, face the dead, and claim what is mine." Jorah hesitated. "And if he wants the same?" She looked at him calm. "Then the fire will decide." Back at Winterfell, Jon returned to a different North. He was no longer just Ned's nephew. He was a legend. The White Wolf, the Dragonborn, the boy who killed a White Walker with the blade of Visenya. Bannermen arrived daily. Manderlys, Umbers, Karstarks, all swearing loyalty. They didn't care about his last name. They cared that he had faced death and won. Lyanna Stark watched from the balcony as her son walked the walls of Winterfell. He moved differently now, with purpose, with command. He wasn't just her son anymore. He was a leader. That night, Jon stood before the heart tree in the Godswood. He knelt, closed his eyes. Old gods. "You gods, I don't care who hears me. I've seen death. I've seen what's coming. Give me the strength to face it." Ghost sat beside him and behind him. The wind changed. A warm breeze, unnatural, cut through the snow. The tree whispered. Jon opened his eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, he saw a shadow above him. A dragon. It vanished in the wind, but the message was clear. The war wasn't just North versus South. It was life versus death, and he was the blade between them. The fires in Winterfell burned late into the night. Snow fell, soft and steady, but inside the great hall, the warmth of steel and strategy filled the air. Jon stood at the head of the long table, his hand resting on Dark Sister, the ancient Valyrian blade of the Targaryens. Lords from every corner of the north sat around him, gruff, tired men, with battle in their blood. "The wall has fallen," Jon said. The dead are not rumors anymore. They're marching, slow but steady. Let the South deal with it, said Lord Serwyn. We've held the North for thousands of years. Let them burn. No, Jon said, firm. The South doesn't believe in monsters. But they will burn just the same. And when the fire reaches us, it'll be too late. Ned Stark stepped forward, voice quiet but sharp. The realm is broken. The Iron Throne squabbles while the dead gather. Jon saw them, fought them. If you won't believe your lord, believe my son. The room went quiet. He had said it. My son. Not my nephew, not a bastard. Jon stepped into the silence. I don't want a crown. I don't want a throne. But I will do what I must. I will ride south, not to conquer, but to warn, to unite. If we don't fight together, we'll die alone. They didn't kneel. Not yet, but they didn't argue either. In the days that followed, Jon prepared. He wrote letters. One to Daenerys Targaryen asking for parley, another to the Vale, requesting the Knights of the Eyrie. He even sent a raven to King's Landing. He didn't expect Robert Baratheon to listen, but he had to try. If we're going to survive this, Jon told Sam, who had come from the Wall with him, we need everything. Every sword, every rider, every scroll of forgotten magic. And we'll need dragonglass. Lots of it. Sam flipped through dusty tomes in the Winterfell library. There's a mountain full of it. Dragonstone built on fire and shadow. That's where the Targaryens first landed. Jon nodded. Then that's where I must go. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood aboard her ship as it cut through the dark waters toward Westeros. Her dragons flew above, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, casting shadows on the waves. She had received Jon's raven. He wanted a meeting, not war, yet Tyrion Lannister stood beside her, hand on his wine cup. You believe him? She asked. I believe he's either a fool or the only man brave enough to speak truth to dragons. She smirked. Then let's see what kind of fire he carries. In King's Landing, Robert Baratheon's world was collapsing. He sat drunk on the Iron Throne, crown askew, while the lords of the realm shouted at each other. Jon Snow is claiming to be Rhaegar's heir. One barked. He didn't claim anything, Renly said. He warned us. He has Valyrian steel and the loyalty of the North, Varys added. And the people are whispering. They're calling him the White Wolf, the Ice Dragon. Robert said nothing. He stared at the throne. Once it had meant power. Now it felt like a trap made of swords. Jon rode south with a small host. Ned Stark, Ser Jorah Mormont, now at his side after swearing fealty, Samwell Tarly, and a few loyal bannermen. Ghost followed like a silent guardian. At the Trident, where Rhaegar died, Jon stopped. He dismounted and walked to the river's edge. This is where it started, Ned said quietly. Jon knelt, fingers brushing the water. It ends with me. Ned put a hand on his shoulder. No, it begins with you. A week later, at the ruins of Harrenhal, Jon met Daenerys Targaryen. The air was tense. Her dragons circled the sky. His men stood alert, but Jon walked alone to the broken courtyard where she waited. She turned, silver hair blowing in the wind. Her violet eyes locked with his. You have my father's blood, she said. And my mother's honor, Jon replied. They stared at each other. Not enemies, not allies. Something in between. I don't want your throne, he said. I want your fire. She raised an eyebrow. You come asking for dragons? I come asking for survival. He told her everything. The wall, the dead, the Night King. And when he finished, she said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, she said, show me. Back in the far north. The Night King marched slowly. He touched the ground where the wall once stood, and ice cracked beneath his feet. With each step, winter grew heavier, but he wasn't just leading whites now. He had begun to raise things older than men, things buried deep beneath the snow. And when he raised his hand again, the dead dragon bones hidden in the frost began to tremble. Jon and Daenerys stood together on the ramparts of Harrenhal. We sail to Dragonstone, she said. We make weapons, and then we fight together. She looked at him again. The fire and the ice, Jon nodded. Together, but in the shadows. Tyrion watched, and so did Varys, and so did men who whispered, which Targaryen will rule when the war is over? Because some fires don't burn to protect, they burn to consume. The sky over Dragonstone was black with smoke. The forge fires roared day and night, hammering dragonglass into blades, arrowheads and spears. The beach was filled with crates, soldiers and whispers. At the cliffs, the dragons waited, massive living storms of fire and fury. Jon stood on the highest ledge, watching Drogon soar through the clouds. The beast shrieked like thunder. Daenerys joined him, her silver hair tied back in braids, her armor dark and fitted. She said nothing at first. "Just watch the horizon. The dead are moving," she said. Jon nodded. "Faster than expected. How many?" "Thousands. Maybe more. And he has something new." Daenerys turned to him, her brow furrowed. "What?" Jon swallowed hard. "He found the bones of the old dragons, and he raised one." She stiffened. "A dragon of ice," he continued. "We saw it in the north. A white but massive. Bones wrapped in frost, blue fire in its chest. It flies. It burns." She clenched her fists. "They're not just walking," Jon said. "They're hunting." 2 days later, the ravens came. The Vale had joined Jon. The Riverlands pledged support. Even a portion of the Stormlands, weary of Robert's drunken rule, had begun to turn. But King's Landing still stood firm, and Robert, broken, paranoid, and drunk with rage, finally acted. He sent out his gold cloaks. He summoned mercenaries. He declared Jon Snow a traitor, a usurper, and demanded the North bend the knee or burn. But the realm was already shifting. At Riverrun, the Tullys raised banners under Ned Stark's name. At the Twins, Walder Frey played both sides, and at Winterfell, Lyanna Stark gathered the remaining forces and sent a raven of her own. If the South will not listen to the White Wolf, then it deserves the storm that's coming. On the coast of the Stormlands, Jon, Daenerys, Tyrion, and Ser Davos met one last time before the march. The table before them showed a map of Westeros. "Pins mark the movement of the dead. They'll reach King's Landing in days," Tyrion said. "Fewer if the Night King flies." "And Robert still won't believe it," Davos muttered. "He'll sit on his chair until the corpses break through his gates." Jon stood. "Placing a pin on the capital, then we don't go to King's Landing to plead." Daenerys looked up. "We go to fight, the Battle of Blackwater." It wasn't between men, it was fire against death. Daenerys came first, riding Drogon through the clouds, raining flame on the marching dead. Rhaegal followed, tearing through whites like leaves. Jon led the ground forces, Starks, Vale Knights, Targaryen loyalists, and even former Lannister men who chose survival over politics. The Night King arrived last. He came riding his undead dragon, its wings frozen, its fire blue. It roared and melted stone with each breath. The dragons clashed midair. Drogon and the Ice Dragon locked jaws, spinning in a spiral of fire and frost. Rhaegal dove, crashing into the whites below, snapping bones with each swipe of his tail. On the battlefield, Jon fought like a storm. Dark Sister glowed in his hands. Every step he took left burning whites in his wake. And then he saw him. The Night King stood beyond the smoke, staring straight at him. Jon ran. He leapt over broken siege weapons, through burning piles of corpses, cutting down anything in his path. He met the Night King at the gates of King's Landing. "You've come far," the monster said in a voice like wind through tombs. "So have you," Jon growled. They fought, steel against ice, speed against silence. Jon's sword clashed with the Night King's blade again and again. Sparks flew. The world burned around them. But the Night King was ancient, cruel, and nearly impossible to kill. And then Drogon fell. The undead dragon latched onto him, teeth ripping into scale. Drogon roared in agony as the Night King raised his hand to finish it. Jon screamed and threw himself forward. He plunged Dark Sister into the Night King's chest. "Nothing," the Night King smiled. But Jon kept pushing. He whispered, "For Lyanna, for the North, for everyone." And the blade ignited. Fire burst through the Night King's body, searing through his ice flesh, and he let out a terrible, inhuman scream. He turned to ash. His army collapsed instantly. Whites froze, shattered. The undead dragon fell from the sky, crashing into the bay. The war was over, but the cost had been great. In the ashes of King's Landing, the survivors stood among the ruins. Robert Baratheon was dead, trampled by his own horse in the chaos. The Iron Throne itself had melted under the fire of dragons, and the question now hung in the smoke. Who will rule? The lords and ladies gathered. Many looked to Daenerys, many looked to Jon, but Jon stepped forward. "I came to fight the dead," he said, "not to wear a crown. If the realm must be ruled, let it be by the one who can rebuild it." He turned to Daenerys. She stared at him. In her eyes, pride, sorrow, and something deeper. "You are the heir," she said softly, "and you are the fire that brought us victory." She took the ashes of the throne in her hand. Together they built a new one, not of swords, but of stone and dragon glass, a throne of unity. Years later, children in Westeros would hear the tale of Jon the White Wolf, the iceborn dragon, and the Queen of Ash and Flame, who ended the long night not with bloodshed, but with sacrifice. The North remained free. The dragons flew still, and in the crypts of Winterfell, Lyanna Stark finally rested in peace, knowing her son had saved the world.